Yeah, back in the field with the Trackstarz. Ryan Wright to Seantana, DJ Jeremaya. What's good?
All right, for all things Trackstarz, make sure you go to trackstarzwithaz.com. Follow us on Instagram, like the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You know what it is. It's Trackstarz Live. Let's get into it.
All right, we have a guest with us today, our boy Jason Bordeaux. What's going on?
Jason Bordeaux.
What's up?
Jason Bordeaux.
Solomon's Porch is in the building. All right, guys, we got a lot of
Bible with Bordeaux.
We got a lot of hard stuff to deal
Jason
with today.
Bordeaux.
Oh, snap.
Ooh.
Well, speaking of Bordeaux.
Number five, Jason. Start a church.
So Hillsong is under a lot of fire right now. There's a documentary that just came out, Hillsong Exposed or Mega Church Exposed. And I mean, this like happening now. Like the lead pastor from Australia just stepped down like a couple of days ago. So this is like as we speak happening. They were already a lot of stuff going on with them recent years. But it's starting to become a real big thing now. So I just watched the 3-part documentary on Discovery Plus, and it kind of breaks down how people processed their reign over the last couple years in different ways, dealing with Carl Lentz, dealing with the actual pastor himself, the head guy in charge, and dealing with the college. So they kind of touched those 3 things. And, you know, we have a little bit of experience with this. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, man, this is what a documentary of our church
don't all
like.
have the same experiences.
Should toxic churches be watch out for pastors named Brian?
You might go to a toxic church if your senior pastor's name is Brian.
That's inside, super inside. But anyway, so me and Jeremaya especially have a lot of experience with this. Like literally, I was watching it like, man, if I was to do a documentary, it would look a lot like this. Same points, everything. So what did you guys think about what's going on with Hillsong that you know? Our boy Sam Collier just made news because he just stepped down from Hillsong Atlanta. That was big. Yeah. So what are you guys feeling?
First of all, shout out to Sam Collier, man. I didn't realize he was the first Black pastor of a Hillsong community church. That's crazy because they're in over what they said 30 different locations and 30 different countries with like 150,000 attendees a week across all locations. That's crazy. So, shout out to him. And I understand from people who attended Hillsong Atlanta that it was popping. It was doing its thing. And they really focused on, I was reading the 11 Alive article that was posted. They really focused on highlighting CHH and R&B over there. So dope shout outs to them because they changed the culture the way Hillsong is, been represented over the years. Man, this documentary, whoa, it's an eye opener, man. It makes you so sad for the kingdom of God. So sad for the kingdom because there are people that are really trying to make sure that people get fed the right way, the word of God, and receive community that the church is supposed to bring. And when you see this documentary and you hear about all the different things that happen to all these victims, it just makes you sad. And it makes you wonder, one of the people in the documentary said that we're no longer doing this or that Carl Lentz was no longer doing this for God or never did this for God. He did it for himself. And I thought about that and I was like, well, all these different platforms we have and all these different ministries and, businesses that we have that are trying to edify God's kingdom and reach the lost and teach the found. It just means to me, like we got a lot of fixing and reshaping to do before this thing even looks attractive again. Because right now it's just not attractive the way it was so much that was exposed. If you haven't watched the documentary, you really need to. It's a long documentary. I mean, each episode is about like an hour and 30 minutes, Sean, maybe longer. It's really long.
It's about an hour, I think. From my memory,
it's over that.
Hour.
They were all about an hour and 30 minutes. I'm almost certain.
Yeah, it was long.
I couldn't get through.
It was super long.
Yeah, it was very long.
Especially me turning it on thinking there was only one thing, and then I'm like, oh, snap, me too. Episode 2. So when there's an episode 2, there's definitely a 3, so I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah. Oh, And speaking of that, they're probably going to put out 4 pretty soon because they're going to have to add to it now that Brian Houston stepped down because there's more allegations around him. And it's funny, you know what? One person in the documentary said there's nothing going on but finger pointing, and that's what the whole documentary is about. This person points to that person, and it points back to that person, and nobody's taking the blame. Nobody's actually said I'm at fault for this. So it's crazy.
What do you think, Jeremiah?
I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I did see some other stuff around it. I did see I watched the interview of the mistress to Carl Lentz.
Yeah.
And how she was talking like she basically he was like, don't Google me, basically like I help people, I help rich people. Like he was like not saying he's a pastor at all until one day she just decided to Google him and it came up, you know what I mean? And I at the end of the day, man, like we are in a place where I feel like God is like the celebrity pastor in mega churches. I think he is like, if you're not legit, I can't say that for every mega church because there's a lot of good churches out there that are big churches, and God wants you to, I think God do want pastors to get more, not get more big, but I think he does want people's churches to flourish. So I can't say mega churches are bad, but what I do say is if people are in those mega churches that just want power and they want influence and they want to be more than what God has called them to be, then I feel like that's a bad thing. And the sad part about it is majority of the time these documentaries come out, it's about mega churches. It's never about a small church that got like 5-10 person people in the church. It's always a church that's like 5,000 plus, you know what I'm saying? So I just think it's a sad situation. It hurts. And I feel like the world loves doing these documentaries. They love doing documentaries on churches that are bad because it look in the eyes of everybody. It's like, see, that's the church. I told y'all the church ain't good. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, nah, not every church is like that. But I think from their eyes, that's what they see.
Jeremiah, one thing about this documentary, though, is that it didn't feel, I don't know who actually made the documentary. Somebody will have to tell me in the chat. But they weren't necessarily saying that church is bad.
Okay.
Yeah. They were saying that this church is bad. Because they had they had people in the documentary that were like, no, my church don't do this. This was weird.
Oh, got you.
You know what I mean?
Got you. Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is the average person looking at this is saying, see, that's why I don't go to church, or see, that's why the church is no good.
I said that.
You know what I'm saying?
I said that.
No, I'm just saying the average person, non-believer, or the average person who's like maybe this church thing or like on the fence about church, looks at documentaries like that and put us all together. They don't separate unless they come to a church and like, oh wow, okay, so every church is not like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whenever somebody tells me about their church,
it's tough because there are so many big churches, and obviously the bigger the church, the more financial things there are involved, and then you got to worry about, keeping people in the building. So you got to entertain the Christians instead of educate them and help them spiritually grow. Right. And then it becomes an organizational job, not a lead pastor leading. And so then you're thinking about, like you would a regular company, like, oh, I want to make money because this is now being a business more than a ministry. And so the bigger the church, the harder it falls a lot of times. Not every church has failed that's huge, but a lot of times the higher it goes, the harder it'll fall. And then people look at that church because it's so popular and their music is so popular, and they do paint every other church like that.
Real quick, do y'all think the enemy is picking these people off, or do you think God is tearing their towers down?
Okay, so I definitely want to talk about that specifically, just in regards to Carl Lentz, because what they were basically saying about him, and we'll talk about the lead pastor guy in a second, but what they were saying about him is that he was kind of always like this. That even in his early days at Wave Church, that he was hitting on girls and maybe they didn't say specifically cheating on his wife, but pretty much, So they were saying he was always like this, and then as he rose, it just got worse and worse, and the whole celebrity lifestyle and all that. So I always wonder that is some of these major pastors, are they people who had good intentions when they started? I wonder about our old pastor too. Was it good intentions when you started and then the power kind of corrupted you? or did you always have bad intentions, which is my thought, and this just magnified your bad intentions? So I'm not sure. That's really hard to decide.
Yeah, I don't know if people go into it with the idea of corrupting it or being corrupt, but I think it goes back to like the Triple E song, you know, power doesn't create corruption, it just exposes it or magnifies it. So the corruption's in there, but then it kind of gets worse and worse.
So what do you guys think about the origins of this church? Seem to be corrupt. His father was a pedophile.
Oh, wow.
Was a pedophile, like super duper pedophile. And Brian knew about it. And right now he's facing jail time because he failed to report it. And that's a crime, right? So
in Australia,
yeah. So he's in big trouble. He could face up to 5 years now. So I think between that and the fact that they found that he was cheating on his wife too, that's why he stepped down. But the origins of the church were messy.
It was scary.
Is that a sign? Like if you found out way back then, because this church's been around for 30 years, if you found out way back then that the guy who started the church, I think his name is Frank Houston, if you knew that he did that, is that church now beyond repair? Or are you in the belief that stick it out and try and work on it? Because back when Jeremaya and I were at Destiny, there was always like this feeling of, do we stay and kind of help? Do we need good people here to kind of rebuild it? Or do you just need to get up out of this bad situation and don't look back? And then everybody had their different, everybody eventually came to the same decision to jump up out of there. But everybody had that struggle of, should I be here to help or should I just get out while I can?
I would say this. I think depending on the leadership and how the leadership approach it, like even though somebody can start a church doesn't mean like whoever's in charge. Like so for example, if Brian Houston was over it and the foundation he knew was shaking, was like, okay, we got to change this. This isn't good. We got to make sure we protect our kids, blah, 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 blah. And then you found that out later. Yeah. I wouldn't be like, if he would have said, I made sure my father was like off of this situation. I backed off of it. You know what I mean? Now, I think the thing is, would you still go to it? I don't think I said I would, but I would say if I didn't know he was, because I always thought Brian Houston was the founder. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, wow. So his father founded the whole Hillsong thing. So I would say, depending on the situation, how leadership handle the founder of that situation. You know what I'm saying? And I know it's going to be hard because that's your father and you like majority of the time you're going to take your parents' word because you like, well, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes some people are going to take their parents' word of, I didn't do that, son, that they're lying on me, son. And you're going to be like, you know what I'm saying? And that's a hard place to be in as a son, or I mean, as a son or a daughter, and your parents, and they don't have that behavior around you, or you don't see it, because sometimes that stuff will creep out, regardless of what happens. Stuff will creep out, and you will see it, or you don't see it, and you like, that's not my father. My father, my kids are always around my dad. Nothing happened to them. Like what? Like you know what I mean? And denial too, because that could be a denial thing. When somebody tell you that, and you're like.
Well, he knew it was true, but it seemed like his father told him, and this is what he ended up telling the victim, is you seduced my dad.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Corrupt from the beginning. Some people are like, hey, it's not the son's fault that the father. No, the son was involved in this.
No,
he paid off the guy. He's the one that sent the payment. So he was involved from the beginning. So was this corrupt from the jump?
Yeah, and it was corrupt from the jump. And the reason why it's beyond repair is because everything is PR related now. Like you hear in the documentary, they say, well, they have a PR team and a group of lawyers that make sure their brand doesn't get muddy. They have a PR team that responds to you. You get a PR response. You get a PR response to allegations. When Carl Lentz got in trouble, it was a PR response. Like there's no genuine heart of Christ responses coming out of this church. It's just, how do we make this look good? How do we not lose the money? How do we not lose the followers? Even when Brian Houston got in the pulpit and he knew he was lying through his teeth, it's like he's saying, they're just trying to attack us.
Yeah.
And that's the American media doing that. It's happened to us in Australia, but it's like the whole time, allegations about you cheating on your wife from 10 years ago, inappropriate text messages, going into somebody's room, spending the night, whatever you did, like all of that's about to come out, and you're still in the pulpit saying that there's nothing wrong with the church. It's just the media. It's crazy.
So here's my tough question, Jason. Is it possible to do what I think most Christians saw as a positive, right? Hillsong was doing well. The music was all over the world. They were building these big churches. It was, like that's what I think a lot of us see as the goal, right? Is to be, influential in the earth and bring people to Christ, right? Is it even possible? Because this keeps happening over and over and over. All of these celebrity pastors, all of these mega churches keep falling and falling and falling and making God look bad in the process. Is what we desire to happen even possible?
I mean, as far as building a large community of believers under one building without it falling?
Even if it's not one building, but just one organized movement, because every single time you see a leader that succumbs to the power, succumbs to the money, succumbs to the pressure of that position, is it even something we should be pursuing at all?
I think one thing Francis Chan, I think, has right is I think we need to focus more on smaller home church, small church settings. Because what happens is as a church grows, it becomes more about the pastor or the preacher or the entertainer in a lot of cases than it is about God, his word, or the people. And like, I was serious. Like, we have an American church who wants to be entertained. They don't want to be fed spiritually. And the problem with that is then you get a bunch of entertainers up there who aren't really studying the word of God. They're not connecting with God. And I think that's partially our fault. I believe part of their fall is on the church. But I think large churches can exist, and I think they can do it in an integrity way. I just think the problem is we become so caught up around a certain preacher or teacher, and that gets to their head, especially guys. Like, most guys, when they comments get to our heads and it builds us up, and then we have this feeling of, oh man, they really like me. I'm really smart, or I'm really, impacting them. And that, that leads into temptation in many areas, whether it's sexually, money, abuse of power in different cases. And I think the thing that we need, the church has to have, going back to the New Testament structure, is you have to have a team of elders that can really be trusted to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
I think we lack that in the common church because nobody knows who elders of Stephen Furtick is, or T.D. Jakes, or Matt Chandler, or John Piper, or anybody. Like, we don't know those elders around them, so we don't know if they have any accountability. And I think we focus so hard on one teacher, and we just trust everything that they say and do. And so whenever they do mess up or fall, it's really bad. And
can somebody pull up our 5 warning signs? Because I want to talk about if you're in a church and you're starting to sense this, because I can point out some that I noticed along the way when we were at Destiny. There were some doesn't even exist anymore, so I'm tired of protecting them. There were some obvious signs that that something was going the wrong direction. But I also want to know from you guys what the answer is. All right, so here's one sign, and while y'all find that for me. There was a very big shift. You got him, Jeremiah? Here's one, and you tell me if it's on the list. There was a very big shift when we moved from one building to another. You remember this, Jeremiah, where it became very, very businessy. It became very almost Chick-fil-A corporate, trying to figure out how to be more of a business than a church type.
John Maxwell.
Feeling. Yeah. And at the time, it had, for good reasons, because like, hey, we're trying to grow this thing, this Destiny style, that we were trying to export to the world. So we got to be more responsible with the money. We got to build this building out. We got to blah, blah, blah. that was one sign that was like, I think everybody was like, it's a little strange that we're talking about business so much in the church, but okay, I get it. We're, this is important. We're stewards of this. So, but what's the answer? What should they have done instead of getting super businessy? What do you guys think?
I think every church, the church I go to now, I think every church should show their members where their money is going. And I think that's responsibility, because at the end of the day, you're tithing, you're giving your money to, you're giving to, first, you're giving it to God, right? You're giving God your tithes, your offerings, whatever you want to do. But then also you're giving to these people. And if you go to, like, I go to a mega church. So the church is big, the church is people on staff there, different things, but they show everybody, like, listen, we gave to a fund for young ladies getting out of prostitution overseas, or we gave to this foundation, we gave to this how much we gave, this is what you did, da, da, da. So now you seeing, like, okay, my money is going to good use, versus you giving, and then all of a sudden your pastor went from a Lincoln to a Maybach, or like, you're starting to see stuff that you like, oh snap, you happen to go to your pastor's house and he balling out of control or stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Elevator in his house.
You still trip about that, bro?
Can't get
Sean,
over.
we be talking about something like, yeah, the elevator, man. Yeah, the elevator. I'm like,
Can't
what?
get over.
Well, okay.
We in a recession, bro.
But you gotta go up and down too. But I think the thing is, I think just how people steward money is a way to show your parishioners to, like, hey, this how you should steward money too, because I'm leading you on how to steward money. Mm-hmm. So if I'm stewarding money the wrong way, then maybe you're doing the same thing, and then maybe you don't need to be in this church because I'm taking your funds and doing something that I have no problem with. And then I think people always, I think the disguise with that is, we've heard for years, like, give, it gives to God, and God's going to take care of what happens to the money. You know what I mean? Yeah, he will, but at the same time, we got to focus in on how are you stewarding that money, because God is also looking at you as the leader of that church on how the money should be stewarded.
Transparency. All right, so riddle them off. What you got, Jeremiah?
We had a bunch, so I didn't think we clapped them down. So one was cult, isolating individuals, meaning like you always there, like they not wanting you to go home, not seeing your family, not like talking to people, and we got to get this ball rolling. It's like, you know what I mean? I remember one time my mom thought Destiny was a cult, because she was like, y'all never come home. Y'all never, like, my 20s, honestly, I could be honest with you. My 20s was nothing but Destiny. And then Trackstarz started coming in, but it was still Destiny. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, she was asking me and my sister at one time, like, are y'all gonna come home? Like, y'all coming back to Jersey? Yeah. Like, what are y'all doing? Like,
that's in the documentary as well. Using passionate, God-fearing people as free labor for your business, your personal movement. And we were there literally all the time, expected to work as paid employees, full-time paid employees, and made to feel guilty when we didn't.
Yeah.
But being used like literally morning till night.
Yeah.
When I met y'all, I didn't understand
to
that.
midnight working.
I didn't understand that at all.
I think goes along with what Jeremiah says. That's a little cultish when the leader requires that much of you just to make whatever is happening happen.
Hey, at least they give you pizza, right?
Not even.
After the sleepover. After the
Jeremiah, the sleepover? The sleepover, Jeremiah?
Sleepover. You know what I'm talking about. You know when the kids, the lock-in, after the lock-in, we got some leftover pizza. Y'all want that? Yeah.
I was just messing with you, Brian.
Nobody's sleeping on that lock-in, were they? Nobody's sleeping.
All right, what you got?
Messing with you,
no,
Brian.
Nobody was. All right, so another one was idol worship, only listen to the pastor and no one else. Another one was scandals, sweeping under the rug. These are not top 5. We didn't crush them down. These are just what we said on the phone.
You can't narrow them down to top 5. It's like top 500.
Cliques within the church.
I would say not being able to question your pastor is a huge sign of a cult following. Huge. If you can't question him, like, I was blessed to be able to ask my pastor to explain something to me, because it was a particular topic that I've heard talked about before, and he mentioned it. So I called him up one day and I was like, hey, just out of curiosity, where did this idea come from? Like scripturally. So we broke up in the Bible. He broke it down for me, why this conclusion is commonly came to. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Where a lot of churches, you're not allowed to question the pastor at all.
Yeah, the idea that the pastor is infallible, that is not of God. Yeah. That's an old Catholic thought.
Or reachable in this case, in many cases.
Is that really big in Black church? Like not questioning the pastor that much? Because I know the church I go to now is like, if you have a question and you could really talk to the pastor, you got his email, you can really go to him after the church and really ask him some questions and have dialogue or whatever. You know what I mean? Even if I haven't done that, but I'm just saying like that happens. You know what I mean? So I don't know, but I know in the Black church, it was like, you know, if you had some questions, you had a meeting, but I don't know. You could get
not all of them.
I keep forgetting.
Not all of them.
Ryan's still stuck at number, I'm joking. Yo, we on the phone, bro.
Scandal free, baby. Scandal free.
That Thursday night called me off the chain. I wish we could post that because Ryan was on the defense when we was coming up with some of these. All right. So gang type behavior, excommunication, basically don't associate with other Christians. We're only right ones. When someone leaves the church, they say forgotten, disassociated.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That's a big one. That's one big. I started noticing when somebody leaves, all of a sudden, some people just aren't with the move of God. Some people just don't have their ear. You know, they're not in the current of God's blessing. You know, they make them feel bad, and they make everybody else at the church that's still there make it seem like that person just is not of God. Like that person was just not listening to God. They're missing out on what you're gonna get. That whole feeling of we can't send nobody away really because we need everybody here for what we're doing here. So if somebody wants to go be a pastor, we're not going to really let them go do that because we want to control everything that's going on. That's a huge sign.
Even when the pastor's saying, well, I'm supposed to plant all these churches.
Yeah.
And you got people there that's like
want to do it.
Ready to go plant. And you're like, no, not this time, not yet. And it's like God is waving on your heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
God is waving on your heart. Like, yo, it's time to go to plant a church. Like do the church. I'm putting that church in you and God keeps saying it to you, and it's like 5 years later, and you still waiting because your pastor won't let you go, quote unquote.
You got to lead with an open hand. You can't be grabbing on to people. That's one thing I learned watching this happen was if your pastor or your congregation holds on to people like this, that's a bad sign. They should be like, oh, you want to do such and such, even if I don't benefit, go do that. That's awesome. You know what I mean? Like that should be their attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. I know whenever a pastor says like, you know, God needs you here, I think that's abusive. And if a pastor's not willing to let people go, I think that's a bad sign. But one of the things that, you know, we're supposed to be a church planting church, a globally church planting church. Yeah. So a pastor should be like John the Baptist. When people say they want to go and follow Jesus, he didn't try to fight to keep them following him. He let them go. Yeah, I feel like pastors need to do the same. Where people say, I want to go plant a church or I want to go to another church. They should be like, well, that's fine. If you feel that's what God's calling you to do, go do that. But I think the bigger the church, the more finances they need, you're not going to see that quite as much.
Especially, and I'll say this real quick, especially if the people that are trying to leave are the talented people that's making the church go.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. If you that dope praise worship leader that people come to see before the pastor, and he like, well, it's time for me to go. The pastor gonna be like, no, sir.
Well, y'all got Montel Jordan.
I don't think God telling you to do that. So I don't know. All right. Control church blindly following leadership. Another one was pastor preaching on church members' situations from the pulpit. Another one was political agendas before Christ, basically, before like your political allegiance. Giving too much money. And I gave this example was I had a situation where somebody I love dearly was giving so much money that they couldn't pay their bills on there. Like they were calling us like, hey, I need this, we need this, and we were like, what's going on? And like and then the problem was this was a small church. This wasn't even like a mega church. This was like a small church. and the members were low and everything, and they were just constantly giving money, and to a point where they end up leaving and getting financially straight again. But they was giving so much money, and not led by God to give money, but led by the persons to give more and more and more.
Here's one real quick. And we got to go soon.
I got one last one.
Okay, I'm gonna slide this one in, and this one I think you should actually go and figure out in research. Either they are an LLC or they act like an LLC, meaning they don't, like what Jason was saying. They don't have a board that is more powerful than them that can tell them no. They are the king and queen of the church, meaning they're the CEO and the COO of that church, and it's run as a business. Some churches are actually set up to where they have the nonprofit, but then they have the business right up under it, and they run it as the business. And that's just a weird thing to do, I think. So if they don't have a group of people that can actually take the church away from them, that's a scary sign, because they won't, if they aren't willing to do that, then when stuff goes wrong and somebody is not doing the right thing, they're not going to want to give it up then either. So that's something to look out for.
I do want to speak on that real quick though, because I used to follow a set of teachers who had that teaching where the kingdom is run by a king, not political advisors. And so I kind of understood that for a little bit, where it was like, look, if your pastor's not makes a decision you don't like or whatever, just find a different church. And until I started studying the actual biblical church, where they had elders and they could remove a teacher if they were teaching heresy. And so whenever you have a church where the pastor is the end all be all of everything, and there's nobody that can make any overriding decisions, they're abusing that mind of they're the king of that church. And I was in that for a little bit, so at least theologically I was there.
Last one, Jeremiah.
Okay. Prosperity teaching versus meek and humble poor teaching.
This is a whole topic right here.
We was going back and forth on the phone about that joint. So, and the last one, pay to play musicians, meaning like people are getting paid. Musicians are coming in getting to
that's
play.
That's literally every church does that.
Yeah, I know. That's why we.
So I don't even know how to put that one on there. But the prosperity one is serious. There are a lot of people who take advantage of certain scriptures to make themselves rich and make people feel like their job is to make me rich so that you can get rich. And that's a scary thing. Like, whatever you want, just say it and you'll have it type preachers. That is scary, because they're counting on you. They're counting on your greed to feed their greed. That's literally all it is. And that's just a scary thing to do. So we could do a whole show on that, but watch out for those kind of anything that makes it seem like, because there are blessings around those things, but when somebody takes advantage of it and you see the fruit of their preaching is them just wearing just a bunch of expensive stuff and driving expensive stuff, it's just why are you keep pushing this agenda? Is it to keep that, or do you really care about them? And that's you got to really be careful about that.
B Plus asked a great question. He said, how do you talk to friends who are part of a church that are exhibiting some of these red flags, especially given how the churches prop themselves up as us against the world?
You got to pray. No, I mean, the only way for some people to get stuff is to see it happen themselves. We got to see it. Or the Holy Spirit.
Hey, and I was talking to y'all, but y'all weren't listening.
The only way to see, you have to see it for yourself.
Our ex-pastor was best friends with yours.
Right. So
that's different. Not best friends. They just preached at each other's churches at times, but not best friends.
Yeah. All right. So the best thing is not to have that attitude of "I told you so." That's the best thing. Not to, right. Just pray, man. Like, it's hard. It's hard to see it. It's hard to come to grips with it. Yeah. It's really. It's not their fault. Like they're being what?
We've had that conversation before.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard for somebody to see it. So be graceful towards them, because when you're in it, you can't see it. Like if
no, you told me to look out for it.
Yeah. I know. What I'm saying is, if it ends up happening, don't have a "I told you so" attitude, because that could hurt as well. Because there's a lot of people that used to go there that are not even living anything like a Christian now. because that pain could really destroy you, or it can make you realize, oh man, I put too much faith in a person. I need to get back to Jesus. You know what I mean? So just
especially if they're new converts. I've seen a lot of people who were newer at our church, former church. Once that shut down, it just like some of them people, if you see them on Facebook and stuff, they don't even do the church thing no more, or they're into something else. You know what I mean? So it's like,
because you put so much faith in a person, it's like, man, if you can fake that, then I don't believe nobody. I don't believe none of y'all. Y'all all faking. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
All right.
I know there was one comment at toward the beginning that I just want to agree with, and it was that it's sad that so many people are celebrating this thing.
This is a sad
when
day.
I feel like we should be heartbroken for the church. Like, I mean, be happy that people in abusing power are being removed, but we need to be hurting for the church right now. This is the time to hurt, not to celebrate and clap and
hurting,
be happy.
And hurting for the victims who had psychological and spiritual abuse keeping their mouths closed all this time. That's the tie a millstone around your neck and throw it into the ocean type stuff that the Bible talks about. Abusing that level of people are trusting their heart and their soul with you, and to do that is like the worst offense ever. So yeah, just pray for these people, man. They're gonna, everybody that is at a Hillsong church now is about to experience what me and Jeremiah experienced. It's devastating. It's devastating. All right, let's get back into it. You in the field with the Trackstarz, Ryan Righteous, Seantana, DJ Jeremaya. Let go.